like to say, like, what does Ruby do? And we'll talk really about what Ruby makes different than the other fulvics out there, because we're not the only one. But the reality is it conditions the rhizosphere to maximize uptake and efficiency, right? So, but now we're kind of getting to those differences.
Let's dive into the differences between humic and fulvic, because there are differences, like we say to people.
Although
humic is fulvic, but fulvic isn't humic. You know,
all fulvics are humics, not all humics are fulvics.
Yeah.
Let that one sink in, folks.
It's definitely so. Let's dive in.
We're Jug Dealers, we're the podcast you need in your feed, teaching the game like you never seen. Jared, Gabe, Rambo, true OGs, masters of the globe, set your mind free. From Denver, Colorado, where the dead is green, we set the data points for the SOPs. Jug Dealers Podcast, yes indeed.
Welcome to the Jug Dealers Podcast, where we discuss all things cannabis and lifestyle related, brought to you by the good people at 5-8. Now available at jugdealers.net and jugdealers.shop. Jayhawk, we are back in studio.
We're back in studio, sponsored by, well, us. You can get everything on the website there. You can also request samples. We're going to be doing some different sample programs as the year progresses. We are going to be opening up a membership club as well. We're going to get a jug club going. Grambo and I have been talking and working in the background with that. We're going to be out and about as well. So you can also hit our jugdealers.net / or / for that matter, bookings. And if you hit that, you can see not only where we're going to be, but you're also going to be able to request our presence at one of your events, your shop, your grow, wherever it happens to be. So I would encourage you to check that out as the year goes on and see where we're going to be. But that's going to be a big part of 2025 is Jug Dealers out and about. And might as well talk about it again, because we did make a brief mention of it last week. You will be seeing, at the very least, most likely you'll be seeing all three of us, full Jug Dealer team at Cannabis. At the very least, you're definitely going to see Gabe and I.
Stuff.
So we've got some big stuff planned.
Grambo's going to be there.
Grambo's going to be there.
I will have had my hernia surgery by then. Everyone knows
it's going to happen.
I popped a hernia doing jujitsu, and
he was on the fence, but he's going to be over the fence.
It's going to happen. And so, actually, as we're saying that too, if you guys are going to be out there and would like to sit down with us, we're gonna bring some equipment out. We're going to have a little temporary studio. We're going to be doing club reviews.
Yeah, I was going to say, we want to do the social club reviews.
We're doing all kinds of stuff. So if you guys do also have a social club that you think we just got to go by, please let us know. Shoot us a message there at Jug Dealers IG, or we've also got a nice little website. You can also hit the comments on there. But what's the website again?
Jugdealers.net and then / bookings.
Yeah, hit the bookings. What's our camp? It's just jugdealers@gmail.com or don't we have just a regular email, or is it all through comments?
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever. Hit us up wherever you can.
Hey.
We seem to have a bunch of different ways to get to us. Gabe, let me just start. We had a nice dab before we started here today, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen.
A couple
Dabs. Today we're going to talk about all things fulvic. So let me just run through real quick, kind of give you a little bit of a table of contents. We are going to talk about the history of, we're going to talk about ancient uses and observations. We're going to talk about how to use it and research how it's evolved, over the last 200 years. Believe it or not, this is not something that's new. We're going to talk about the differences between fulvics and humics.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. We're going to talk about how it's produced, benefits to the plant, and of course, we're going to talk about our beloved Ruby fulvic. Before we do that, Gabe, you got a couple of shout outs you'd like to do. Why don't you take it away, sir?
You want to slide that down real quick just so I remember? So the listener shout outs for this week were Stephen Drave, 1876.
We see you. And thanks for the love. The Dottie G.
Hey, I know the Dottie.
What's up,
the Dottie?
And last but not least, but the best name,
Jive
Turkey 24.
Jive Turkey 24.
There's a bunch of Jive Turkeys.
Yeah, a bunch of Jive Turkeys running around
A couple of Jive Turkeys up in this one.
So, hey, everybody out there, we see you again. You all helped us get to 10,000. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions, please reach out through the comment section, through Instagram, through whatever you can get us on. We're happy to be back here. Last but not least, myself and Jair will be down at Urban Roots February 1st for their customer day. I'll also be in Florida a few days around that. And then my good friend and fellow jug dealer Gabe and I will also be running from Maryland all the way up to Boston, Vermont. We're going to do a nice little East Coast run. So if you guys are looking to have us come by, please hit us up. That's February 3rd through 7th. So
I think the 4th, hopefully at Shore Grow in New Jersey. And then the 6th. think we're going to be up in Vermont trying to do a little get together.
A little something or other. So anyway, come out, see us. We'd love to see you guys. We'd love to connect with you. That's always, one of the most fun things we get to do as we go out and about. You will be seeing us out and about all over the places. But for now, let's talk about fulvic acid. So start off a little bit of history there, Gabe, if you don't mind.
So, fulvic acid is Graham, let's slide it down just a touch. It's a naturally occurring organic compound that is a byproduct of decomposition of plant and animal matter. It's a component of humus in the organic material in soil and plays a critical role in soil fertility, nutrient availability, and ecosystem health.
Wow. I mean, that sounds like a lot of really good stuff.
I mean, it's pretty, because a lot of us remove a lot of that nitrification process. We rake the leaves in our yard and stuff like that. We remove a lot of those processes, but out in nature, this is how a lot of this stuff happens. You see the leaves fall off the trees in the fall. They go through that breakdown period. And as they break down, they release all these elements and stuff back into the soil.
Well, and of course, we always like to start with some things like this with a little bit of history and a little bit of kind of where it came from, how it got there, which people didn't
know these things for the longest time. We always talk about how America was founded, and realistically, for the longest time, people just used land until it didn't produce anymore, and then they just kept moving west
because there was an understanding. And really this, first off, I love this discovery. It's like, how the heck did somebody figure this out? But at the same time, I think it's interesting to look at it from a modern perspective, in the sense that we can say, okay, I know why these things are happening. I know the science behind it, or at least part of the science behind it. But at the same time, if you know when to properly do something, does it matter if you know the science behind it or not? Like we talked about planting peas. Well, you plant peas here on St. Paddy's Day. Why do you do that? Well, I can tell you it's because of a soil temperature thing. But in reality, does it matter if you know that, or does it just matter to make sure and plant on St. Patrick's Day, right? Mm-hmm. So I've always liked really knowing the background, and I've always found, it's super interesting, these somewhat at times and many times these serendipitous, you like that word, serendipitous, discovery of these things like humic and fulvic acid. And
it all seems to, as we continue to do these episodes and go back, it seems to all revolve around the 19th century, the 1800s.
Yeah.
People finally starting to use some science.
Well,
and why does this happen?
Well, exactly. And as you see, if you slide that up a little bit, Graham, but as you can see with the early agriculture use, they weren't knowing at all what was going on. They were just observing,
throwing stuff at the wall. Hey, this seems to do something.
This is doing something though, right? So humic substances, including fulvic acid, and of course, humic substances being a part of humus, which is basically fully composted plant material that is available for uptake, right? And it's also that adds a lot to the cation exchange capacity. So it's holding a lot of nutrients, all that kind of stuff. But long story short, they were unknowingly used by ancient civilizations when they applied organic compost to soil to enhance fertility. Though they were unaware of the specific components, they recognized the benefits of humus-rich soil for crop growth. So even, I don't know if you guys have ever watched anything on Graham Hancock, any of that kind of stuff, and some of the LiDAR research that's going on down in the Amazon. Some really interesting stuff. You can actually get on Rogan's podcast and check it out. But it's talking about, so you mentioned slash and burning and things like that. And even as it moved across the West, and, what did you do in a jungle scenario, right? Because everybody thinks that the jungle is super lush, oh my God, the soil must be amazing, right? It's got to be the richest, but no. In fact, the soil is thin and shitty and very few nutrients in it. Why is that? Because they're all up top. Yeah. It's all in the trees, it's all in the plants, right? And so that's why you'd see this slash and burning. Well, they're actually proving now that there was a lot less of that happened, and actually a somewhat, even to us modern folks, still a bit mysterious, but essentially an ancient composting method called Tierra Preta, I believe is what it's called. Which if you could look that up, possibly, Grambo, while I'm chatting away a little bit.
How on earth is that spelled?
I would say TIERRA, like PRETA or something like that, 2 words. But it's definitely something that they're looking at, and these are ancient composting techniques. Again, they didn't know these compounds and these molecules are in there, but they damn sure knew it did something to the soil. They definitely could see that it was giving them back more than they had put in. They could definitely see that it was a more culturing, aspect of the soil. Portuguese
for the black soil.
Hello.
Damn, I was pretty close. That's right. I I think I was spot on, actually.
Yeah.
Look at me. So it talks a lot about, the Amazonian soil management / burn or / char. But that's also where, biochar and a lot of that stuff, So again, I think it's been.
You go back to the potash
Right.
episode. And where does that come from?
Pot ash.
Oh my God. I love it. But
It's
these
almost like it makes sense.
It's almost like it, but I love it when I have these aha moments. And I think that's a lot of times what we're also trying, to
share with our listeners.
yeah, to create, for you guys as well. Okay. Another use was actually in traditional medicine. So fulvic acid rich substances have long been used in traditional medicine, believe it or not, particularly the Ayurveda, right? So She Legit, which we've talked a little bit about,
it's
right?
Getting pretty popular
It
these
is.
days,
And
too.
what a name too, right? She Legit to quit. Hey. That's all I can ever think when I hear She Legit.
That's for all the old guys out there.
That's for, you know what, which I think is some of the bulk of our listeners. So anyhow, She Legit is a natural substance found in the Himalayan regions containing high amounts of fulvic acid and has been, if you can slide that up, has been used for centuries as a rejuvenator and aptogen. Scientific discovery and study. Let's talk a little bit about that. And in fact, an aptogen, isn't that I believe is that a natural blood thinner? Something I don't know. We might have to look that
That's
one up.
another one Grambo will have to look up.
Adaptogen.
This part, I was going to say this part I wanted to include, but I didn't, I'm like, it's not for the plant things. So.
Well, here
people.
we're always trying to decide
look,
what to include and what not to include.
Yeah. And look, I wanted to kind of cover a little bit deeper just because people are, just fulvics in general are becoming a lot more popular, regardless of whether it's for plants.
The term adaptogen refers to non-toxic plants or their extracts purported to diminish stress and support overall well-being when consumed. Okay. There you go.
And generally, we always tell people that's what fulvic does for the plants too.
Hey, trying to tie it all together here, folks. We're not scientists, but we are curious.
That's the Jug Dealers model. We're not scientists.
We're not
curious.
scientists.
Yeah, it's like I
But
said.
we like to know things.
Yeah, I got a little hammied one time, and I told my father-in-law, because I've got quite a few doctors in the family, and I looked at him one time and I said, I may not be a doctor, but I'm a medicine man. And so that has gone down in some lore in my family. Anyhow, let's talk about the 19th century developments when it comes to fulvic acids. Gabe, take us away.
As we've discussed in the past, in the 1800s, scientists began isolating and studying humic substances. The terms humic and fulvic acid were coined to describe the different fractions of these organic substances based on their solubility and chemical properties. So obviously what you're seeing is kind of a separation. But fulvic acid was recognized as a smaller, more soluble fraction of the humic acid, of the humic substances, distinct for its ability to dissolve in both acidic and alkaline conditions.
Very interesting.
So what we like to tell people is it's basically the smaller particle inside of the humic.
And part of what it's doing is, and I like to say it conditions the rhizosphere, right? And that's what the fact that it can actually take it up in acidic or alkaline situations, that's basically saying, hey, we've got that. And in fact, if you look even at our new 5.8 logo, you see the old graph of right there that where does everything fall to the maximum main availability for all nutrients across the board.
And people will notice just on that subject, you'll notice that it's not the P hive anymore. It's 5, the number, and 8. So it's a little bit of a rebranding.
It's still pronounced the exact same.
Because I did get a message about that, thinking because there's a lot of duplicate pages that will come up. That is us.
Hey,
They're
you
like,
know
I
what?
think there's a scam page.
You know
for
what?
guys.
You know what? I think that's probably worth actually bringing
Yes,
up.
that
So,
is us.
thank
Let's
you.
talk a little bit about 20th century.
Yeah, and I'll mention this a little bit differently, but just how fulvic and acids or fulvic and humic acids are really, really, truly interlinked. In fact, they're virtually the same thing. But anyway, as far as 20th century research, so hey, let's bring it up just a little bit. Advances in analytical techniques in the early to 20th mid-century allowed scientists to better understand the chemical structure and properties of fulvic acid. And obviously, that's in large part due to, I think, advancements in general chemistry, right? And just knowing how molecules, are evolving and how, different things are uptaken, whether it's, salt-based or organic or inorganic.
It's mainly hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. So, and hydrogen's a pretty small molecule.
Very well. It's number one.
smallest
It's the smallest one. It's number one.
Smallest one.
Yeah, look at that. I may not know the whole table, but
I know it's
But I'm a
number
medicine
one.
man.
but I'm a medicine man.
Put that in the comments. Throw in are you a medicine man? Put it in the comments.
Jeez, I should have never said that.
You probably
I
not.
should have never said that. Okay.
Memes coming soon.
Researchers found
New meme contest just announced.
fudge. Researchers found that fulvic acid has a low molecular weight and high bioavailability, making it capable of chelating and transporting nutrients in soil and plants. So it's a natural
What is
chelator.
that? Can you explain to our listeners what the hell chelation
Yeah,
even
absolutely.
means?
So chelate. So that's it relates to a Latin term which just means claw. Chelate means claw. So what it does is it grabs that molecule and it protects it from being uptaken somewhere else. So for example, iron, because of as we know, it does
Plus
iron
2 plus 3.
plus 2
yeah.
plus 3. So it operates in a different ionic form, right? It has a couple different ionic forms. So it's pretty unstable. So in an alkaline soil, iron will become bound up immediately by an alkaline soil and not be available. So the iron is there, but it's not available. So in alkaline soil, like we're at here in Colorado, you need to have a chelator of some sort to protect it so the plant can actually
so it
uptake
bonds
it.
with it and
Right, so it
holds
can actually
like
uptake
a
it.
glass of beer.
Yeah, more or less. So that's why even here you'll see massive chlorosis or chlorotic plants, which both those basically means, yellowing of the plants, lack of nitrogen, which is actually also people just think it's lack of nitrogen right off the rip because of the green. But in reality, iron
Building
is
block of chlorophyll.
exactly. Iron is an essential part of chlorophyll. It's not part of chlorophyll, but an essential part of chlorophyll production.
Well,
So
we always discuss, is it a deficiency or is it an inavailability?
well, and that's what, so like, for example, here, and that's a great point. And just to finish my thought, here in Colorado, you have maple trees that are chlorotic, beautiful autumn blaze maples, for example, which I absolutely love. And I really like to have one, but problem is it likes really acidic soils. And so if you're not really giving it a bunch of chelated iron, I don't even know if you truly could on a really big maple tree, give it enough. It's going to have that yellow look all year long. And that's really not a healthy look for the plant. People go, oh, that's kind of a nice color. Reality is it's
That's
not.
a beautiful color.
Yeah. Reality is it's not. And again, to your point, it's not lack of being there. It's lack of availability. So if you think about fulvics are a natural chelate. There are also things like iron EDTA and things like that are, full on, chelates that are added to, quite frankly, a lot of different fertilizer products and things like that to maximize availability so it actually gets into the plant. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to give the nutrients into the substrate, you want to actually get in your plant, right?
Yeah, and that's just it. You want it to, just because it's in the substrate doesn't mean it's in the plant. Doesn't mean it's in the plant. Okay, so now we're on to modern applications. Here we are in the 21st century. Let's talk a little bit about that, Gabe. How is it in relation to agriculture? How is it used? So it's extremely integral into agriculture in the fact that fulvic acid is now widely used in organic and conventional farming to enhance soil quality, as we've kind of talked about, promote root development, and improve crop yields. So as it makes these elements more available, they're just utilizing them more efficiently.
Right. So it's not really like a booster per se. It's just making everything more available.
Better.
Yeah,
like we say, make more available. Its ability to chelate minerals and enhance nutrient absorption make it a key ingredient in many soil conditioners and fertilizers. A lot of times I'll tell people, hey, if you do a runoff test and your EC is too high, a lot of times we'll tell people run the Ruby Fulvic at 15 mils a gallon, which is 3 times the recommended. And it's not going to burn the plant. What it's going to do is it's going to bond with those extra elements that are in your soil. It's going to help strip them out. And at the same time, it's going to recondition that soil. It's going to bring that pH back into a manageable level.
Yep.
Because again, a lot of times when this stuff happens, your pH is completely out of whack because of it.
Well, so let's talk just a little bit about that. And of course, if you go back to some of our earlier episodes, which we're going to run some of those back a little bit this year, are key components of it. But one of the things I like to mention is that, water or nitrogen is the only one that's water soluble, right? So not only is it going to move in by mass flow into your plant, it's also going to move out of your substrate by mass flow. Everything else is done by diffusion. Diffusion is more of a chemical process, so it takes longer, it takes energy, it takes things like that. That's the reason why the nitrogen is the only thing you can truly burn your plant with. Now, you can lock out other plants based on pH and availability and ratios and things like that within your substrate, which is kind of what we're talking about. We're trying to bust up lockout. But reality is you're not really burning your plant in that regard. You're making things chemically unavailable, unfortunately, which is going to obviously lead to deleterious effects, of course, right? right? But the nitrogen itself is the only thing that actually burn a plant, but it's also the only thing that's going to run out of your pot. So that's why a lot of early recipes truly call for that 10 to 15% runoff, because they were using a lot of cheap nitrogens in there, and they really didn't want you to burn your plant. So they're
the nitrate nitrogen
giving you a little bit of
NH3.
They're basically covering their own acid, more or less, you know? So the other way it's been used modern, which I always found to be kind of interesting, but it's in health and wellness. Right. So in recent decades, fulvic acid has gained popularity as a dietary supplement due to its purported health benefits. It is believed, don't go drinking Ruby, folks. Hold on. Let me just start.
Do not.
Do not. I mean, honestly, it's probably kind of sweet.
You got to mix
it like a sweet red wine.
You got to mix it with water first.
Yeah. And then knock her back. It is believed to improve nutrient absorption, just like it does in plants. Very interesting, right? Boost immunity and act as an antioxidant, right? So it's going and grabbing those free radicals, which free radicals are cancer causing.
The worst kind of radical.
Yeah, it's the worst kind of radical is a free radical, right? If you can move that up a little bit there, Grambo. So back to our friend, Sheila Jit. I'm not going to do it again, which contains fulvic acid, remains a significant focus in health supplements, and is widely studied for its potential health benefits. I don't remember where I first heard about this. It might have been a Rogan podcast, something like that.
Evan Britton. Okay. Actually, is a friend of Eugene's, but that's where I've been hearing.
So, and it's been getting, I mean, it's just obviously there's a lot of stuff you can pull up on She legit.
I think it's like, does she know what she's talking about? Oh, she legit.
Oh, she legit. She legit. Oh, God. And I digress.
Good, dude, leave it to the comedian.
And I digress. Okay. Third, of course,
some
on
environmental applications.
Yeah.
Fulvic acid is also studied for its role in environmental remediation, particularly for its ability to bind heavy metals and other pollutants.
Go figure.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Current research, ongoing research continues to explore fulvic acid's potential in such areas as human health, investigating anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and gut health benefits, environmental science, so in soil restoration, not just in remediation, but in actual restoration and pollution mitigation.
So you wonder about even using it in Superfund sites and things like that, because obviously even hemp is used. So now you got me thinking here, right? So what if you're actually using fulvic acids in conjunction with hemp, which is a hyperaccumulator of heavy metals and is actually used widely in Superfund sites to pull all those heavy metals out of the soil. So imagine if you're putting in a bunch of fulvic acid and then to max up,
spray it with Ruby.
Man, hey, folks.
Sustainable agriculture, enhancing crop resilience to stress conditions like drought or poor soil quality. So
So getting everything you can get out of that soil, even if it's of poor quality, it's going to maximize whatever's in there. And that's the thing. That's what I like to say. Like, what does Ruby do? And we'll talk really about what Ruby makes different than the other fulvics out there, because we're not the only one. But the reality is it conditions the rhizosphere to maximize uptake and efficiency, right? So, but now we're kind of getting to those differences.
Let's dive into the differences between humic and fulvic, because there are differences, like we say to people. Although humic is fulvic, but fulvic isn't humic.
All fulvics are humics, not all humics are fulvics.
Yeah.
Let that one sink in, folks.
It's definitely so. Let's dive in. Humic and fulvic acids are organic compounds that come from the decomposition of plant and animal matter.
As we've said,
both are found in humus, the organic component of soil, and have important roles in improving plant soil health, plant growth, and nutrient uptake. Here's a comparison of the two.
So if we look at it from just a molecular weight and size perspective, humic acid is a larger molecular weight, and it's more complex in structure. It is less soluble in water, especially under acidic conditions. So it's not nearly as
just a bigger
flexible.
Chunk.
And then fulvic acid, as we said, or as we implied, I suppose, is a smaller molecular weight and simpler structure, and it is completely water soluble at all pH levels. And that's how it acts as that natural chelator, right? Yep. And so I like to say, if you, I don't like using the word dumb it down, but if you simplify it a little bit, what I like to say is that humics help the substrate retain nutrients, and fulvics help the plant uptake those nutrients.
I always use the mnemonic device just to remember that humics are huge.
Well,
there you go.
All right. I like it.
And there you have it.
I like it. And there you have it.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great week.
So that's from a weight and size perspective. What about solubility? And we talked a little bit about it, but why don't we talk a little bit more?
Humic acid is insoluble in acidic conditions, but soluble in alkaline conditions.
Weird.
This limits the availability in certain soil conditions.
Yep.
So I actually thought that was really interesting. I honestly didn't know that. Soluble water Fulvic acid is soluble in water under all pH conditions, making it more bioavailable to plants and microorganisms.
And I think microorganisms is an important part of that as well, because obviously,
so.
When you're feeding the soil and feeding the microorganisms, that's feeding the plant ultimately, right?
Yep.
So there is a different in color actually as well. The humic acid, which, it's always those dark, real black ones,
rich,
stuff
coffee
like that.
looking,
yeah.
darker really.
And then Fulvics are typically that yellow to right brown, even a little bit of a tint of red. They definitely have a lighter appearance. Some of them are pretty golden. Ours has that red,
we'll explain that in a little while.
But then the Fulvitech has got more like of golden look to it, but that's also anyway. Last but not least, chemical composition. So humic acid contains more carbon, being a bigger molecule doesn't surprise me at all. Also has fewer oxygen containing functional groups, resulting in a higher capacity for long-term nutrient and water retention in soil. Hence, just like I was saying, it helps retain nutrients within the substrate. Fulvic acid has a higher oxygen content, which makes it more reactive. Think about free radicals and things like that. Think about the oxygens popping off and running around, and are better at chelating, which is binding, or as we said, binding nutrients for easier uptake by plants. Biological activity. So actually it wasn't like number 5, biological activity. Humic acid provides long-term benefits. So that's the other thing I like. It's like long-term benefit, short-term benefit. So Fulvic's going to give you that short-term satisfaction. Humic's going to give you that long-term quality, right? So you also think about humic acids from a soil structure standpoint. So having the right kind of tilth, having the right kind of water holding capacity, having the right kind of air in there.
And that's where that conditioning comes in.
Absolutely. And that's all going to help with also nutrient retention. And long story short, humics just have, it's a little bit of a less immediate effects. Like I said, that's long-term. Fulvic is short-term, right? Fulvic's more biologically active and faster acting, as I just implied, enhancing plant nutrient absorption and stress resistance more directly, which I also think is a really important part of that. Understanding getting a plant more nutrients more efficiently and water more efficiently, everything else is obviously going to help reduce stress in said plant.
People don't think about making things more efficient. They just think about, a lot of what we've seen over the last, let's say 6-7 years has been just more. Whereas we're always kind of like,
how do we get more out of less?
How do you let everything just perform better?
That's one of Neil's things, right?
That's why.
The formulator of New Millennium.
And that's why when we push the Ruby, we're like, use it with any nutrient line. But the reality is, tone your numbers down, because it's going to make everything more efficient.
It's going to juice it up.
Socio base.
Yep.
Son.
So let's talk about some of the functions in agriculture. Humic acid improves soil structure and aeration.
Yep, like we were saying.
It enhances water retention and cation exchange capacity.
So it's going to be able to hold more nutrients, higher CEC.
Promotes microbial activity over time. Fulvic acid, in turn, enhances nutrient uptake and transport in the plant. So like Jaron was saying, it's going to help those things move through the plant.
Which is why you can also use Ruby as a foliar.
Yep.
Keep that in mind.
Acts as a chelator, which again, that's part of the first statement, which it enhances nutrient uptake because it's bonding with these elements and making them more available. Again, like we say, it makes the +2s and +3s more attractive.
Well, and I also, as we're sitting here thinking about it, just kind of popped into my head too. It's almost similar, although a completely different mode of action. But the fact of the stress tolerance aspect of it, it's almost like initiating that SAR, that systemic acquired resistance, where you're using something else, whether it's a harpin protein or the natural attack by an insect, for example. It's going to kick in those pathways to start saying,
where the plant's like, I'm going to do this work myself.
I'm going to kick ass doing it, right? And so that's one of the things, even when I went to school a long time ago, for horticultural food crop production, realizing that, one of the best things, like, we're not growers, right? And I've talked about this. Like, I think it's funny when people talk, no, the plants are growing themselves. We're plant janitors. We're merely working around it, right? The plant it's an autotroph. We're heterotroph. It's making its own food. That's truly what makes it amazing. So I realized, there you go. So I realized early on that they were more highly evolved than we were. So the best thing we could do is put it in the best situation possible for it to take care of itself. Mm-hmm. And that's indoor or outdoor, right? Because obviously outdoor, well, what are you going to do? You're going to condition your soil. You're going to give it plenty of nutrients. You're going to make sure it's water watered properly. You're gonna if there is certain pest pressures, you're going to address that. That's how you just put it in a position to do its best. So in my mind, you're almost using it as a little bit of a cheater or a shortcut or a hack, however you want to look at it, by using these products like Ruby Fulvic, specifically Ruby Fulvic, to initiate these stress responses to lower said stress. And of course, you put that in with some Slicium. Ooh, boy.
I'll tell you what, man, I've been using, we reformulated that Slicium bloom.
Yeah.
And I've been using it pretty heavily this round in flower. And man, it really does make a difference the way it stacks everything.
Well, and here's the thing. It has like some oligosaccharides and some different things that are very specific for flower bulking and terpene production. So do understand, folks, that the bloom is not just a different bottle with a slightly different product. There are some very specific things that have been put in there to maximize flower production and also specifically terpene production. Okay, let's not get too hung up on that. Let's talk about how it's produced.
We've talked about quite a bit. We've talked about the history.
Yeah.
We've talked about what it does for plants. Now let's talk about how it's made. Basically in natural formation, you have organic matter breakdown, and that's when plants and animals and microbes decompose to form complex organic compounds in the soil. Like we've talked about, you go into the forest, things die, goes down in the soil. That's the way it happens out in nature. Then you have humification, which through microbial activity and chemical reactions over time, these compounds break down further into humic substances, including fulvic acid. Then you have oxidization, in which the fulvic acid forms during the advanced stages of humification, where it becomes more soluble due to its smaller molecular size compared to the humic acid. So basically what I've just described is as this is kind of breaking down over time.
Think about it even just as things compost, whether you're doing a cold or a hot composting, and you see how over time that literally breaks down. Even the smells change.
Yep.
You start with this sloppy, nasty thing, and by the end you got coffee grounds.
If you've ever been,
you do it right.
And you can tell a lot of times, well, even you go to the yard and you get, any type of gardening supply yard, and you get compost, you get mulch, you get any of those things, you'll notice you stick your hand in the pile, there's an exothermic reaction. It's hot. It's putting off heat because there's all these different processes.
A lot going on there. So obviously that natural formation, that's where people, even though they didn't know it was humic and fulvic acids, that's what people are noticing. Hey, we let this sit here for X amount of time. It breaks down. It starts as something and turns into something else. And that something else is beneficial to plants, right? Yep. So that's kind of where we're starting with it. Well, then at a certain point, people, as they do,
had to commercialize
They have to commercialize it. And they start looking, well, how can we extract this in a different way, right? Because that natural process does take time. It does take a little bit of know-how. It does take some aeration, whatever, right? So fulvic acid is commercially extracted for use in agriculture, believe it or not, supplements, and other industries. This process typically involves raw material selection, which is organic rich sources like leonardite. And that's typically what you see on the back of all these is, that it's, I'm spacing on.
So leonardite for our listeners is basically it's a layer in the coal bed that is soft, that is too soft to burn as coal.
Yep.
So, but basically, again, if you think about what coal beds are, ancient forests and stuff like that. So it's all this different organic.
If you think about coal or oil, you got burning dinosaurs, right?
Yep.
That's essentially what we're talking about.
So that's basically what that stuff is. And so they take it. Go ahead.
Well, and I was just, the reality is too, it's processed from leonardite. That was the word I was spacing on.
And they separate the two at the mine.
Yes.
They'll separate the coal from the leonardite. So you have two different piles.
Yep. So it could also be called, humic shale. But these materials have high concentration of humic and fulvic acids, right? So then at that point, it's an extraction process. You're taking kind of the raw material and you're doing alkaline extraction. The raw material is treated with an alkaline solution such as potassium hydroxide or sodium hydroxide to dissolve humic and fulvic acids and make them available. There is also an acid preparation, which the acid, which is often sulfuric or hydrochloric acid, is added to the alkaline solution, precipitating the humic acid while leaving fulvic acid in the solution. So that's a separation process, of course, and then filtering, right? The solution is filtered to separate fulvic acid from the impurities and solids, which is basically the rest of that leonardite, right? So that's the typical chemical process, right? And then they do further purify, right?
Yep. And then beyond that, just so people understand, They're doing it that way. They're doing it, we have one of the inputs on Ruby where they actually take live materials, soak it, squeeze it out, and stuff like that. That's the thing.
We do have, ours is much more of a natural process now. It's not the full, full time you're talking about full composting, but you are talking about it's more of a cold press process, right? Mm-hmm. Direct plant extracted style. Leonardite is pretty much what you see across the board. That's one of the things that does truly make Ruby different, right? So let's talk a little bit about quality testing. There she is. There's my girl. Quality testing and standardization. After extraction, the fulvic acid is analyzed for its content, purity, and potential contaminants to ensure it meets industry standards, go figure, before being sold as a product. Fulvic acid is prized for its solubility in water and its ability to chelate nutrients, making it beneficial in agriculture and health, as we've talked about, right? So if you can move that up there, Rambo. We also know that fulvic acid is highly beneficial to plants. We know that it improves nutrient uptake. Again, that whole chelation process, and even specifically with these ones that do have,
it's really those those micros that it helps out with, again, and a lot of the iron, zinc, magnesium, the things that are harder for the plant though.
Yeah, and that also exist in different ionic forms and stuff. It's a little bit easier for the plant to uptake it when in conjunction with these wonderful fulvic acids. If you can move that up a little bit. All right, so obviously we also know it enhances soil health, right? By actually increasing soil microbial activity. I want to talk a little bit about that, right? So we're actually promoting a balanced ecosystem.
This goes back to our episodes about bacteria, and mycorrhiza, and all that stuff.
Yeah. So it's actually, it's promoting and it's contributing to a healthy ecosystem. So rather than just putting something that is in an inorganic, salt-based plant available form right away to the plant, right? Which is definitely done in modern agriculture a lot. We're going in a little bit different way, going in the back door a little bit, and actually, again, trying to feed the soil to feed the plant.
I want to discuss something with you.
Let's discuss.
This is a little bit off of script, but
that's our favorite.
There's certain people out there. There's certain. I'm not going to name anybody, but I'm sure you already know where I'm going with this. Mm-hmm. Where it's very synthetic versus organic,
right?
And it's very. If you're not running organic, then screw you. You don't understand. And look. I understand that there are some processes, we talk about all the time about the processes where people are using hypochlorous acid and stuff like that. But can you kind of address how the fulvic fits in on a recipe where someone is using, let's just say synthetic nutrients, mm-hmm. but they want to add something like this? What are your thoughts on that? Because you and I both are we like to call it synganic.
Yeah, synganic, right?
A combination.
I think going at it in both directions and kind of having that almost in the way that you have the humic, that relation between humic and fulvics, and that you get that immediate response with the residual quality, right? That's why I like having that. You want a certain amount of and again, so organic, inorganic, that's carbon-based or not carbon-based, right? But that's just a chemical term, right? So what's actually plant available is an inorganic form, right? So I know that sounds kind of strange, but that's just what it is. And anyhow, so the way that Ruby are really, and I do want to speak, on all fulvic acids, although not all things are created equal, right?
But most fulvics are a single source. Ours is a 9 source.
And in fact, I can't even actually name another one on the market that's more than a single source. But anyhow, so the wonderful part about this is it I really look at Ruby as even our keystone in the whole new millennium line that could also truly turn around to be a keystone in any line, right? Because you're just tying it all together. You're saying, okay, I'm seeing what's here. I'm seeing the palette, and it's almost like the artist to the palette. It's coming in and whipping it around and making sure everything's getting to where it's supposed to go and keeping shit in line. I almost look at it like a conductor of sorts. So, putting Ruby in there, I'm telling you, and we've done the testing and done everything else. Winter we obviously call the gateway jug, but I'm telling you right now, Ruby fulvic is the keystone. That's the keystone bottle. So I believe it can truly fit in and slot in that way as a keystone into truly any program, whether it's an organic program. And like we're saying, the fact that it's available in alkaline or acidic conditions, and the fact that it's going to help chelate, whether it's organic or inorganic based nutrients.
Now,
it's going to do both.
One caveat, I know the answer, but I'm going to have you address it. Let's talk about the folks who are using hypochlorous. How do we fit in there?
Well, okay. So I'm actually very glad you brought that up, because the reality is they're antagonistic. Okay. Unfortunately, if you've got,
they don't play nice is what you're saying.
They don't play nice together. And unfortunately what they're going to do is the hypochlorous acid, because fulvic acid is so reactive, it's going to go straight after that and it's going to neutralize it, because that's essentially what a cleaner is doing. It's neutralizing a molecule.
Some fallout is what you're saying?
Well, I don't know if you necessarily see fallout or precipitation, but what you're going to do is you're just not going to get the cleaning
cancel
aspect.
Out what you're trying.
Exactly. They're basically just canceling each other out. So not only are you not going to get the cleaning properties of a cleanse or hypochlorous acid or something like that, you're also not going to get the chelation aspects of using a fulvic acid. So
how you recommend people mitigate that issue?
You could either do a single time per week hand water in if you want to do something like that, or as we've been suggesting more and more doing, because we also know that it does increase nutrient transport within the plant, doing a fuller application
and
as well.
It's such a small particle because it's number ones and twos.
Yeah, it's tiny,
Can
guys.
I ask what uses hypochlorous has in the grow? This might be something that's newer to me and newer to a lot of our listeners.
For a lot of people, it's just keeping their root zone sterile, but the reality is you don't want your root zone sterile. It gives people nice bright white roots that they can show
maybe
their
like
friends.
it's got its roots in deep culture, no pun intended.
Well, and not only that, I think it has its roots in overwatering myself. I mean, here's the deal. Look, this whole
it justifies running your nutrients at 4.0.
Yeah, right. This whole plants and clean plants, it's like no. Plants evolved right alongside all kinds of single-celled organisms, and protozoa and bacteria and mycorrhizals and all these other things. So the clean growing thing, I just don't really believe in that.
Honestly, a lot of it is just I can speak to the fact that running New Millennium through a fertigation system takes an additional time for maintenance. Basically, that's what it comes down to. And with labor being your highest cost, people were really looking for, hey, how do I not clean filters? How do I not clean tanks? I can tell you, right. I've cleaned a lot of tanks in my life using New Millennium. Guess what? I don't care because my weed tastes better. So a lot of it really stemmed from, hey, we're going to make it so you have less labor, less maintenance. As I've discussed many, many times, labor is your highest cost. Yeah. So if you can decrease these, and not for nothing, I've spent a lot of time in tanks cleaning them.
But I would also say, things like you can't avoid certain problems by not having too small of emitters, things like that. Yep. I know you're a big fan of a minimum 2 gallon per hour.
2 to 3 gallon.
You know what I mean? Yep. So think about that. A lot of people are using the quarter and the half gallon per hour. I'm telling you right now, anything's going to pretty much clog that. So reality is hypochlorous acid and clean growing and everything else, I get it has a place in certain scenarios. Although I do think that, we talk a lot about there's the 17 plant essential nutrients, but what about all the other plant beneficial biostimulants, nutrients, et cetera, right?
Silica.
So they're not necessary.
Yeah, silica, but not necessary,
but beneficial.
But very beneficial. I can tell you right now, that Gorilla Glue in my house is bent over like a candelabra. You know what it's not doing? Breaking. And even the points where I've had, a possible break, it didn't break all the way through. It's still there and it's still hanging on. So even that's a lot of silica.
For me, even as a Syngenta grower, I still believe in biology, and I still believe in biology to feed the plant, and I still believe in biology to initiate the stress responses and things like that.
Dude, I've been using Scotty's Recharge.
There you go.
Stuff is great.
Another great product. Shout out to Dude Grows. Love you guys. I know we got a lot of the same listeners, so it's always good to see that whole group, keeping it strong. Yeah, so
I love it. The pH that you guys talking about, my secret weapon always was Recharge and a ton of humics and fulvics. And I just knew that it worked. It's like talking about the St. Patrick's Day planting. I didn't know why, but now it works. Makes sense.
So, and here's the thing, really, and we're going to move into really talking about specifically about Ruby, but if you can move that up just a little bit there, Grambo, a little bit more. So here's the reality, right? If you really want to put it all into one little bottom of the funnel, by integrating a fulvic acid, what are you going to get? By putting that in a fertilization or soil management program, farmers and gardeners can significantly boost crop yields, quality, and overall plant health. So we know that this is something that works. Come on, get on board, grab some Ruby Fulvic. And again, the best part about it is you can put it on with any program. Now,
I call it like the Frank's Red Hot. I put that shit
on everything, baby.
You know?
And you know what? We've been talking about that sticker forever. Let's get on that, Grambo. Okay. So the one thing I did want to address, of course, and anybody that's ever got on it or looks on there, you go, I see just Ruby Full. Where's the Vic from? Right.
Yeah. This I thought was important.
So I think it's worth addressing, and you can find this in our lovely catalog here. But what are we trying? Number one, a fulvic acid by the USDA is not really recognized as different than humic acid because it's different, very difficult from an instrumentation standpoint to say specifically that's fulvic and specifically that's humic.
So you're saying that they can't measure the particle because it's so small that they can't differentiate between.
They can't differentiate it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they can't differentiate.
I always thought that was really interesting when you told me that, because realistically on the Ruby bottle, it says molybdenum.
Well, but how much moly is it? It's 0.001%, right? And
that's just so we could register it. You know.
Anyway, okay.
That registration process is hard
it's fun
for
stuff.
Y'all who don't know.
Why the heck do we do the number sign, the dollar sign, and the percent sign? Well, what it really, and this is going to tie this all together beautifully, right? So for the number sign, it's going to increase yields. For the dollar sign, it's going to produce higher ROI. And for the percent sign, it's going to enhance overall quality. So that is what that nod is supposed to be. So we're really trying to show people that this is a multi-use product that does a bunch of amazing things, much of which we can't even quantify.
I've worked here all this time, and I never knew that. I just thought,
whoops.
I thought it was kind of like, a lot of people think it's like a FU thing.
We hear Ruby full shit, Ruby flush. I've heard a lot of different folks. It is Ruby fulvic, and it's about increasing yields, increasing your ROI, and having better quality. That is what the last three symbols are about. All right, everybody, you know it now. Now you know.
So let's talk about, I think, something that's really important that really makes the Ruby a lot different than everybody else is that sourcing. So when we talk about most of the other fulvics you're going to see on the market, they are a single source, which means somebody goes to one mine, they have a contract with them, and they're like, hey, we're going to take all your lanodite, we're going to make fulvic acid from it.
And you get what you get.
Ours is a 9 source, which means we pull it from all different places in the world. Not only do we pull it from all different places of the world and different coal mines, but then beyond that, we actually do have a component in there where it is living, fresh plants that we've taken and put in a bath and squeezed out, kind of like the swamp. So that biodiversity is really what makes ours different.
That's the difference.
And again, plants are 45% carbon. If they're pulling carbon from South America and Europe and this and that, there's going to retain all those different flavors. So that's where we talk about the flavor coming. That's why we talk about when we say we have the sauce your base package, that is a big part of the sauce. People talk about the secret sauce. There's a reason that no one else makes the products that we
let me be very honest with you. This is an incredibly complex product that Neil is incredibly proud of, probably most proud of Ruby Full over any other product in the line. That's truly how well it works, and also how proud he is of it. Right.
Can you just explain? Because I know a lot of people, when they open the bottle,
okay.
They get nervous. They see, as our friend Savage Gardens.
Yeah. Hold on. I can't even think of it right now. I'll think of it in a second.
But he refers to it as the sunleaf because he sees it looks like there's literally blood clots in there. Can you explain?
Yeah. So what that is, and that stuff is totally normal. So right. So once we actually get that down to the bottom, we put the cap on it. We have actually kind of like tried to chill it out, right? Because there's a lot of bioactivity. Those little chunks and those streaks you see in there, that's bacteria, right? So it's
supposed to be there. It
is supposed to be there, definitely. And over time, it will grow more, because guess what? Bacteria likes to grow. And what is bioslime? Bacteria likes to party together, right? Remember when we had the bacteria episode and we talked about bioslimes, and it's like, that's why they congregate together, because they're comfortable together, right? So you do see that. So once you pop the air and it gets reactivated, because what we're doing is we're basically stabilizing it and containing it. We're capping it. And then as soon as that air hits, it's reactivated. Those bacteria are going to start growing again. And you're also going to see it go from a real bright red typically to over time, the natural oxidation process, it will get to a darker color. As long as it smells kind of sweet, like a sweet red wine, something like that, then you're good. If it went to a very putrid, like this is one of the products you do not want to heat. There are certain products that it's not going to really matter. You don't want to overheat the stuff. You can't, it will turn at that point. And if you ever have an issue, and if anybody ever has an issue, whether it's been sitting there too long and you're just not sure, hit us up. We'll take care of you. Reality is that it is a very stable product, but there are changes that happen over time that you will see, which is all natural.
Can you discuss the differences between Fulvitech and Ruby Fulvic for our listeners?
I would love to. Yeah. And in fact, we'll kind of end up with that. So you guys know that we also did Scietetics, which is basically a sister commercial line to New Millennium. So Fulvitech is going to be that same wonderful 9 sources of fulvic acid with just that bacteria pulled out of it. And the reason is it works better through drip irrigation and commercial. That is the commercial formulation of Ruby, if you want to look at it like that.
So for anybody who's running any of these powder lines, this is going to be the choice that you're going to.
That's going to be the choice. Now, if you really wanted the, I mean, honestly, we have some people. Niche Cannabis uses both, right? So he'll hand water and loving the bacteria, but then they will run through their lines Fulvitech. So those are very, very similar products. It's just that the Fulvitech doesn't have the bacteria and it runs a little bit cleaner. They're the same dilution rate. I venture to say nearly the same effectiveness, but I'm also not going to lie. That bacteria does real shit in there. There's no question.
So that being said, if you are running Fulvitech, you are going to want to make sure that if you do have a hypochlorous acid, you're not running it with the hypochlorous.
Correct.
And then beyond that, let's say you do hypochlorous once a week, you're just going to want to make sure that those lines are completely purged.
Yeah, throw a little extra water through there, and I would say that both ways, basically, if you will, you know what I mean? So just think about that kind of stuff, guys. Man, I really feel like this is another great episode. I appreciate everybody showing up. If you do have show ideas as well, we're always open to that.
If you ever have questions,
jugdealers.net. Just go there and scroll all the way to the bottom. You'll see this questions page that goes right to the boys.
And that goes right to me. You can also request samples, all that. And last but not least, you can now request bookings from the Jug Dealers. So get that done. You'll see our calendar out there. Guys, we're going to be seeing you out and about. We're going to see you in Florida. We're going to see you on the East Coast. We're going to see you in Spain. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks for hanging out with us this long from the Jug Den. Until next time. Peace out, guys.
Peace and love.